Hi everybody, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and we're looking at a full moon in the cardinal water sign of Cancer occurring on January 13th, 2025 at 5:27 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be at 24 degrees even. So let's take a look at the forecast for this lunation. Full moon in Cancer, Monday, January 13th, may heighten stress or anxiety over a call to action or in response to a challenging condition or situation, which might require you to assume more responsibility or to take on unfamiliar tasks or a new way of thinking, which are a departure from past conditioning or your perception of what is normal, as the moon joins Mars retrograde in Cancer, and together they form a minor grand trine aspect pattern with Uranus in Taurus and Neptune conjunct the North Node in Pisces, a trine aspect to Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces, and a cardinal T-square aspect pattern with the Sun in Capricorn conjunct Pluto in Aquarius and Chiron in Aries, as the North Node and Neptune link the Sun, Pluto, and Uranus through a second minor grand trine. Rising above challenges or making the best of any situation might involve doing something you would rather not be doing, or choosing to delay gratification you could have in the present moment because you know that waiting for the right time or working harder and longer will make your success that much sweeter, due to Venus and Saturn square to Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, but sextile to Mercury in Capricorn. Moon Mars trine to Venus Saturn brings harmony to two feminine-masculine planetary pairings, while Uranus interacting with the Sun and Pluto encourages change and transformation in personal, societal, career, or family expectations and adherence to stereotypically gendered roles or identification. A sudden shift in power could occur following this lunation, such as a child caring for a parent, an employee leaving a job to become their own boss, the oppressed seeking justice and winning, or the invisible worker receiving recognition and thanks. So let's take a look at the sky. And actually, before that, I wanted to bring up something interesting, astronomical as well as astrological. That conjunction of the moon and Mars will actually be seen as the moon eating Mars. And if you go to space.com, you can find out more about it and the times that this occurs. It's an occultation of Mars by the full moon. And this is going to be a once approximately every 14 years that we should be able to see this. So it's rather unique. And if you have a clear sky, you might want to go out and take a look at what's going on. They give you times for different locations when you should be able to see Mars disappear and then Mars reappearing. And it does say it would be better watched with a telescope or binoculars because of the intensity of the light of the moon. So these are the times for different cities when you should be able to be watching it and see the moon eat Mars. So let's just get rid of that, go back over here and get the chart for this full moon. The first thing that pops out for me is that we have some balance going on in here and the ability to overcome challenges, because the challenge is represented by the opposition of the moon and the sun with two volatile planets, Mars and Pluto, making things more intense or feeling more dramatic or producing more pressure, where the need for something could be quite strong. And then we've got Chiron there creating that T square in Aries. So it puts a lot of pressure upon the individual having to take on that warrior, more martial action. Mars is the ruler of Aries, and it is like a call to action under pressure or a response to something which is painful or uncomfortable or frightening. And yet we have the ability to work with that or to overcome whatever the challenge is because of these two overlapping minor grand trines that are here. And they both are interacting with the very same planets that are being kind of yanked around by the T square. We've got Uranus with the Moon and Mars, and Neptune and the North Node. Then we've got Uranus, Neptune, the North Node, and the Sun and Pluto. I sometimes look at aspects in a chart as plumbing. And when you have some tension, blockage, limitations coming about through the aspect patterns that are usually portrayed in red, the squares, the oppositions, look to see, well, what other lines are coming out from those planets? Where can you redirect your attention, or what other planets can you turn to utilize so that you can come out of that tense situation? And T squares are not necessarily bad, just as trines, grand trines, minor grand trine are not necessarily good, but they do represent that activating energy. The T square is meant to get you unstuck or to create something in your life that you're going to have to respond to, react to, or make a decision under some sort of pressure or duress. There has to be some movement going on. And the ease, flow, support, talents, help that come from trines and sextiles are readily available, but often we take them for granted. We don't notice that there are people willing to help us or that we have particular talents that we're not utilizing. But we can call upon them, or we become more aware of them and utilize them when we have some sort of challenge going on. So everything has a reason or a purpose. If you had a chart with absolutely no challenging aspects within it, you'd be bored and you probably wouldn't be doing much. You'd be sitting around doing nothing. So we have a nice balance today with this full moon. And we also have a nice balance going on between these two pairings that I mentioned, where the moon is basically a feminine planet and Mars is considered masculine. And then we have the same energy pattern going on with Venus being feminine and Saturn being a masculine planet. So we have that interacting in a favorable way, plus it's pulling on Uranus. It's bringing Uranus into play. The overall energy coming out of, I feel like Uranus is a key player in its interaction with everything else, as well as the North Node and Neptune. I always look at this aspect pattern with the two overlapping triangles as being like angel wings, and the shoulders being the planet of change, Uranus, and the planet of inspiration, faith, beauty, healing, rescuing, that's Neptune, to ascend to a higher level through change. And then Pluto is the power, the transformation. It is in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus. So again, we get that kind of doubling up of the Uranian energy that is future looking. It wants to move toward the future. It also upholds truth. It can be quite rebellious, activating. It's an activist planet, a rebellious planet, genius, individuality, uniqueness. Yet it's participating with other planets that are pointing out, healing and inspiration, taking care of needs, responding to needs. Cancer is a sign that's associated with the fourth house of home, family, and psychological foundations. The things that we believe because of what we saw our parents doing, how we were raised when we were young, that home life, that family life, and the Capricorn and Cancer opposition highlights a parental axis between houses 4 and 10. Capricorn rules the 10th house of career and reputation, authority, mastery, where we make our home out there in the world and basically our coworkers, clients, we literally play out many of the same family stories and beliefs from our upbringing. You look at any business where multiple people are working, and you can see the archetypes, the patterns, the family dysfunction, even that comes out, particularly in office settings in larger corporate entities. Um, so that's at play here, but change that there can be the change in the roles, there can be a change in terms of the masculine and feminine energy and how it's viewed, a change in what's traditional, what's not traditional, that uh, we may take literally some of the old forward into the new because of that Sun in Capricorn and Pluto in Aquarius. The standalone aspects that are not part of our wings here and that T square are the Jupiter retrograde in dualistic Gemini in that square to Venus conjunct Saturn. That's where the delayed gratification comes in, or doing something maybe that you don't really want to do. But we've got Venus at her highest in Pisces with Saturn, and this might point toward making something more appealing, building the anticipation. It becomes rarer, more beautiful, more desirable the longer you have to wait for it, or the harder you have to work for it. If something were just handed over, it might not be appreciated. It might not, anything that would come too easily might not be appreciated. And I think that we all have that awareness right now while Mercury, the planet of speech, communication, and thought, is in success oriented Capricorn, which is a Saturn ruled sign. And there it is making that sextile to Saturn and Venus, that basically we feel better about something, we appreciate something more when we've had to work very hard to achieve it, to have it. And we have more respect as well for ourselves, for whatever it is that we've gained, or for anybody else who is also working particularly hard. This isn't necessarily an easy chart, but it's a nice, tight chart. And there are good ways forward. Definitely pressure and potentially fear, but also plenty of encouragement for stepping up and taking on a particular task or responsibility or commitment, so that you keep moving forward. Really, the thing here is no stagnation. Mercury in that sesqui square, that black dotted line you see to Uranus, seems to recognize or create the recognition subconsciously that sitting still on something that is traditional and trying to hold on to it is not necessarily the best thing for the future. It doesn't mean that you have to forget all about the past or discard everything from the past, but that the looking toward the adaptation, the flexibility, the acceptance, the allowance, integration is coming from where we find our mutable energy, which is flexible and adaptable. And Pisces is basically the sea of infinite possibilities, and there are no boundaries or borders with that sign. There's a great deal of allowance, acceptance, forgiveness, healing energy on tap, readily available with Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node all saying, well, that's the path. That's the direction. I like this full moon very much, particularly since if you follow your feelings, your intuition, and your heart, particularly the intuition, your instincts, things may change very rapidly, but they're changing because they're supposed to. And I think you would be under a certain level of protection as well because of the trines that are going on here from the moon and Mars. I would just say that people who are extremely stressed may act out more physically because Mars is a physical planet and Pluto is volatile, Mars is volatile. Pluto is in Aquarius, which would rule larger crowds as well as activism and people who are already perhaps rebellious or unstable in some way. So do be aware of your surroundings and perhaps refrain from joining large groups and putting yourself in strongly intense or potentially physically violent situations. So do keep your awareness about you and watch your own reactions. Mars is retrograde, and when a planet's retrograde, we have to pay more attention to it. Or we go back over old things. So perhaps at this full moon, because the moon and Mars are together, past painful things will come up. It is up to you to decide, do you want to keep carrying that around forever? Or do you want to shift your perspective? Do you want to move forward? How are you going to go about doing that? And if you feel that anybody's pushing your buttons at this full moon, it may be better to remove yourself than play into that to let them literally egg you on. So boundaries and maintaining control, because Pluto is a planet of control, over how you choose to feel, over your emotions. It can affect your reputation and how other people see you. And we have enough good things over here through those trines that you can be seen in a very good light and you can receive good recognition and reward or support. So don't create your own problems. That would be the main thing to look at if you are literally forced into a situation where you realize that your behavior, your actions in response to somebody else will reflect back on you. Whether, right or wrong, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. think about the appearance that you would like to be projecting. The other thing I found really, really interesting when I was off looking for an image that represented what I was feeling from the chart, and I found that painting of Mary Patton on the clipper ship Neptune's Car. And I found that through nationalparkservice.gov and a couple of other sites as well that were talking about women sailing, women in maritime history. And her story is incredible, but there are other women as well whose stories are equally as incredible. What they were able to do, and the amount of both, physical, mental, and emotional strength to step into roles in place of men. And I'm sure there are just as many stories of men who have had to step into traditional women's roles as well, such as perhaps raising children. But interesting reading, very interesting reading. I think there's been more actual people who take action no matter what the stereotypes of society or whatever the media or books or teachers or whoever officials are telling us, well, this is how you have to be. But if we go backwards and look, it's amazing to find out that there are always people who just don't care what anybody else says, or when they're put in situations where they have to simply do the right thing to do at the right time, they do it. And that's some of what the patterns are about now in the sky. That it isn't about your gender, your traditional roles. It's about doing what it is that you feel you should be doing, whatever your path is. And if you're willing to make sacrifices to do it, or you're willing to do it no matter what anybody else might be saying about it. And that's the most important thing right now. Let's take a look at the Sabian symbol. And we do not have to round up because we're at an even 24 degrees 0 minutes. A woman and two men castaways on a small island of the South Seas. Keynote: the focalization of complex inner potentialities in harmonic and concrete relationships. We are dealing here with a special phase of the process of integration. The woman and the two men represent the threefold aspect of the human personality, particularly at this stage when one of these aspects, the emotional life, the woman, is facing the possibility, if not the inevitability, of relating itself to both the spiritual and the mental. This confrontation occurs on a small island of the South Seas, and South always refers symbolically to the strong and passionate impulses of human nature. Somehow, the threefold consciousness has to develop a harmonious and well-integrated modus vivendi, a specific way of life. If successful, this will release powerful energies and will lead to the next symbolic scene. We have reached the fourth stage of the 23rd fivefold sequence. As is most often the case, we are introduced here to a specific technique, or at least to a problem of technique in living. The three human beings should become integrated, but the form this integration will take seems left open. It has to be a concrete type of integration in terms of the emotional and biological drives of human nature, an island of the South Seas, and the field of integration is small. The key to the problem of relationship should be the realization of interdependence. So that is the Sabian symbol And I know if you were to Google that, there are other astrologers who have basically written their own views as well of the Sabian symbols, but I like to go with more traditional, or in terms of the integration, that's definitely calling to me with the symbiosis of Cancer and the strong Piscean energy that we have to adapt, adjust, accept, and have tolerance, that we definitely can see the physical and the emotional at play with Moon and Mars, the spiritual aspect with Neptune, the mental aspect, the intellectual, with Mercury interacting with the Pisces planets as well. Well, I think that's it. This is probably one of my longer recordings. Thank you for listening through and being patient. And do stay safe until the next time that we get together, which will be a new moon in 2 weeks' time.